Another feature that we've added in this version of Total Quilter is the ability to add notes to a design. This is something that, if you're familiar with Floriani Total Control, we added this feature last fall as an update, and now we've added it inside of Total Quilter. And what this does is allows you to put notes in a design. So like between color sequences, you can drop a note in. So if you're doing a design and you don't want to forget something, you can give yourself a note as a reminder. And these notes will print out on your print preview of the design color sequence. And so it's really a neat feature to have. Also, this tool, we've automatically programmed in notes for things like applique. So you'll see that I have this design on the screen. This is just a piece of artwork. I'm going to convert it to an applique. When I convert it to an applique, you'll see that I have my placement line, my tack down line, and my border line. This is a typical applique design where you have three parts to it. But when you're new to doing embroidery, maybe doing applique, sometimes it's hard to remember when you should do some. Or if you're working with a complicated design, sometimes it's just helpful to have a reminder of, hey, this is the placement stitch, so before I go on, I need to make sure I lay my fabric over the top of it. And because some designs can get pretty complicated, and it can be hard to remember exactly when you need to do certain steps. And so with this feature, we have added notes in here, and you can see right here, this is an applique, and you'll see the stop sign. That's actually one of the notes that's in between the placement stitch and the tack down, and then another note that's between the tack down and the border stitch. And you can't read it all the way here, but it's a visual to let you know that, hey, there's a note in this. And when you go up to print preview, I just clicked on the print preview icon, you'll get your design page. This will show you an image of the design, and when you come up here, you can toggle to the next page. And when I click on the next page, it's going to bring up the color sequence guide. But the difference in this build is that now you're going to see these stop signs in between color sequences. You have color number 1, where it's going to do a placement stitch, and what it tells you is to stop before going to color sequence 2. It says, before proceeding, place the applique fabric over the placement line. And it says if the fabric isn't pre-cut to size and is instead to be cut away after tack down, make sure that the fabric is at least 1/2 inch larger on each side of the line. This is just a helpful reminder, and it will print when you print this page out, so that when you're at your machine, you're going to be able to do color number 1, and then you're going to see this before you do color number 2. And you'll notice that in between color number 2 and 3, which is this is the tack down stitch and this is the border, it says before proceeding, cut the excess fabric around the outside of the tack down stitch. And so when you're doing applique, and if you just lay a piece of fabric down and you do the tack down, now you've got to cut away that fabric, unless you used a fabric cutter and you cut it to size first. And it says this step is not necessary if the fabric was cut to size prior to doing the embroidery. So once you get that cut, then you can load the next color on your machine and hit start, and it will do the border stitch. So that's how the design notes work. With something like applique, it's already pre-done for you. But sometimes when you're creating a design, you may want to create your own objects and your own elements. And you can do that in the software. Like I can come back to this and I can copy and paste it 3 times, because with applique, as you know, there's a placement, tack down, and border stitch like we just discussed. So let's say you wanted to make your own applique and you didn't necessarily want to use the applique tool because you want to do something special to it maybe. So what I'll do is I'll actually make another copy of, so I have 4 copies here. I'm going to select each one of them. I'm going to convert it to a run, and I'm going to change the color of each one so that there is a difference between all of them here. And so, as you know, with applique you have a placement line, and that is typically just a run stitch that is in the shape of the applique piece. And then you have a tack down stitch. So right here I have one color, and it's the placement line. If I go around here, you'll see that that's the placement line. And then I have a tack down stitch, and this one is to be used after you lay the fabric down, so it'll tack it down inside the hoop to the other piece of material. Then you have typically you have a border stitch at this point, but let's say that because you're doing your own, you wanted to make this, you wanted to add like a stipple stitch on top of the applique fabric. You could do that if you were creating your own custom applique. So on the final one, the last piece, I could make this a steel border, right? So what I have here is, if I hit play, is that I have a placement stitch, and after this gets done, I'm going to lay my fabric down. Then this stitch is going to be the tack down. I'm going to cut the material away, and then it's going to do this stitch over the top of it, which is a stipple stitch, just to decorate the fabric, because I wanted to do it at this point a little bit different than just a standard applique. And the last thing it's going to do is the border around the edge. But let's say that maybe I was making this design for somebody else, a friend of mine, and I was going to have them stitch it out, but I wanted to make sure that they knew what was going on. I could come in here and say, I could select this first running stitch, which is the placement stitch, and I could right click on it, and I could go to add note. And when I choose that, it's kind of falling off the screen here, but you have the ability to choose insert before or after. And so I'm going to choose to insert this after. And when I do that, this add note dialog box comes up, and I don't have any saved in here, so nothing is showing up, but I could come in here and say, before proceeding, lay fabric over placement stitch, and I have the ability to save it. So once I get a note that I want, I can hit save, and I can just name this placement note and hit save, and I'll choose OK. And when I choose OK, you'll see that it dropped in this little note right after this color sequence. Well, the same thing's true when after I do the tack down, I've got to cut the material away, right? So I can right click on this, and I can choose to add a note, and add note after, insert it after, and I can say before proceeding, cut excess fabric from around the tack down stitch, and choose to save it, and I'll just say tack down note and hit save, and I'll choose OK. So now I've added these two notes, and so let's go back to our print preview, this icon up here at the top, select it, and now I'm going to go to the second page right here, and you'll see that this note, both notes have been insert in the correct location. So I could be doing a design, and it could be a reminder for me, it could be a reminder for whoever is going to stitch the design out, but it's just a very nice feature to have, especially when working with big designs. And it's just it's simple to use, and it's very helpful. And I just want to show you that I did choose to save these. So if I come to this piece of artwork, and let's just right mouse click on it and choose to add a note after. If this was, for the applique, when I choose this drop down box, I have that option for the placement note or the tack down note. So I don't have to retype it again. I can just select it, it's going to bring it up, hit OK, and it will add that note in. So it's a really neat tool, very helpful. There's a lot of uses for it. We hope that you enjoy the new design notes and the abilities that you have with it, and we hope you use it all the time.